At number 10 we have Rex WILLIMON. This is the story of just a bunch of boys going out for a nice fishing trip. Rex was taking the family and friends out to catch some fish and probably crush some beers, and then their boat started to flood and the engine crapped out. This left them stuck on a boat that was sinking fast. Luckily, Rex sent out a Mayday distress call and the Coast Guard heard it and they were coming to pick them up. Slick move by Rex to save everyone. Unlucky for him, the Coast Guard stopped checking to see where they were after about 2 hours because the Mayday signal didn't get completed. This was a huge bummer for the whole crew that was now holding onto the bow of the boat because it was the only thing that managed to stay afloat. Everything else sunk to the bottom of the ocean like a solid turd hitting the toilet bowl. The whole gang was stuck out there for about 20 hours. And it was Rex's wife who pushed the Coast Guard to go out and try and find them again, and then they were eventually saved. She probably got an amazing anniversary present that year.
Coming in at number 9 we have Lori Erica Ruff, or Lori Kennedy, or Becky Sue, or I guess who knows, right? Lori! Can we make that rhyme with mystery? I don't know. I feel like we can give it a good go. Lori. Mystery. Anyway, I digress. Lori was kind of an oddball. She was married to a guy called Blake and they had a child, but she wouldn't let any of his family hold her. She was so strange. She'd do weird things like ask for an easy bake oven for Christmas even though she was 40, although I have to say that isn't the worst thing in the world, like let the woman bake. It's also reported that she loved a nap, which I'm also actually okay with. Throughout her marriage to Blake, she kept a lockbox which she instructed him never to open. Lori had started becoming very strange when Blake asked for a divorce. Sadly, after a few very intense months, she was on a big downward spiral and ended up ending her own life. After her death, the lockbox was finally opened and it revealed some drama. It seems that Lori Erica Ruff used to be Lori Kennedy, who used to be Becky Sue Turner, but the only Becky Sue Turner her age had died age 2 in a fire in Fife, Washington. Lori got a new social security number, and also in the box were mysterious scribblings saying very strange things like 402 months and North Hollywood Police. What does it all mean? No one has ever yet cleared up the mystery of who she was. They may never.
At number 8, we have a boy being smuggled. Now, another time in 2015, a 19-year-old Moroccan woman was looking nervous as she waited to cross the border. She was crossing at a land border crossing at Ceuta, a Spanish enclave city in North Africa. When the guards put her suitcase through a scanner, they discovered an 8-year-old boy in her suitcase. Just think about it. See the photo. So it turns out she was trying to smuggle the boy into Europe for her husband, the boy's father. At the border, she was detained as well as the father of the child eventually when he showed up. Now, since you obviously shouldn't try to put a person in a suitcase, especially a child, the Ceuta magistrate ordered the father to be held on charges of human rights abuse. Now, if you have the child's permission like David Dobrik did in one of his recent videos, the line, who knows? Plus, that was only for a couple minutes, not for an entire border crossing.
Coming in at number 7 we have Angela Hernandez. I don't know how long I would last in the wild, but some of these stories are giving me hope that I wouldn't die right away from exposure because I'm a soft boy. Angela Hernandez was driving through California to visit some of her family. She was staying in contact with them, letting them know when she was on the road and when she was stopping off somewhere. Her family got worried when she stopped updating them, and then they got really worried when she never arrived, so a search was launched. A week went by without any contact with Angela and people started to fear the worst. But then a destroyed SUV was found, and not far from it was Angela Hernandez. She was alive. She had driven off the side of a cliff and survived the crash, but she was too injured to move very far. She managed to salvage some material from her car to make a hose so she could drink water and keep herself from dying from dehydration.
Coming into number 6 we have the Spaceman. Look at this photo. Do you recognize it? It is one of the most famous photos of the 20th century. This photo was taken on a family outing to a beautiful part of the northern English countryside. The photographer was Carlisle fireman Jim Templeton, who took a picture of his daughter. Only when he got it developed there was an unlikely photobomber, a NASA spacesuit wearing cosmonaut. What a cosmonaut was doing in Stowaway in the British countryside, we don't know. The Templetons were baffled, and soon the media picked up on the mystery figure. The family claimed that there was absolutely nobody else around when the picture was taken. Also, it actually really does look like a spacesuit, doesn't it? Film company Kodak offered a reward to anyone who could prove that the photo was faked, but absolutely nobody could. So who's the mystery spaceman? Again, We don't know.
Tom and Eileen Lonergan. Here's another reason why to avoid open water with people you don't know. They might just leave you out there because you're so easy to forget. If you go out on a boat with people you just met, make sure you're very loud, extravagant, and maybe a little obnoxious. That way you don't get left behind. Or if you do get left behind, eventually they'll remember you and they come back for you. Unlike Tom and Eileen, no one came back for them. And no one even realized they were missing until 2 days after they were gone. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Open Water, but it's about a couple who goes out on a diving trip, gets forgotten, and then I think they both get eaten by sharks or they freeze to death or something. I'm not sure how it ends, but I just know that it's a really bad way to spend your vacation, and it did really happen to this couple. The movie is actually based on them. Unfortunately, unlike the other people on this list, they were never found and probably just ended up as fish food.
Coming into number 4, we've got Casanova. Casanova, bro, what's your secret? Well, that, my friends, is a mystery. You may have heard of the term Casanova, which generally means a man popular with the ladies. However, Casanova was indeed a real person. Born in 1725 and died in 1798, Casanova was an Italian adventurer who was the OG playboy of the Western world, although there are rumours that he was a Venetian spy, which actually is a rumour he perpetuated himself. Casanova was reported to have seduced over 130 prominent women, a handful of men. He invented the lottery in France and helped Mozart write the libretto to Don Giovanni. How Casanova managed to woo so many people and be so famous, how he managed to invent so many successful get-rich schemes, how he lived such a high drama life. I mean, the guy escaped from prison at one point. Honestly, it's a pure mystery. Casanova was morally dubious, although this was the 1700s. He wrote a book called Histoire de ma vie, Story of My Life, and it is well regarded as one of the best autobiographies of all time. His book, amongst others, has honestly inspired me to write my own.
On to number 3. A baby. Now this is horrifying, okay? Back in 2016, a woman on an Air France flight from Istanbul to Paris allegedly smuggled her baby on a plane. Now, 3.5 hours into the flight, witnesses noticed that something in her bag was moving when she opened it, and they saw a baby girl. Now, this reportedly happened because the paperwork for her baby was not in order. It is said that she was past customs when she was stopped from boarding with the baby, and reports say that she bought another ticket, hid the baby, and went to a different gate to board a different flight. Now, in this case, this means the baby made it past the initial screening, but then was stopped afterwards. Also, once you get to the gate of an airplane, people only check passports and boarding passes, so it does seem plausible that the baby was hidden in the woman's cloth bag at this time. Still though, just think of the safety of that baby. It's just in a carry-on on a flight for hours. No.
Coming in at number 2, we have Elizabeth Smart. This was a terrifying case of a young girl being taken right from her home. Elizabeth Smart was sitting in a room and then out of nowhere a man burst in with a knife. Elizabeth was terrified and didn't want to die, so she just sat there in shock as the man took her by the arm and dragged her out of the house. Next thing you know, this poor girl was gone. A search was launched, but no one could find out what happened to this poor girl. She might have been lost to the world forever if she didn't have one of the craftiest sisters of all time. Elizabeth's sister shared a room with her and was hiding under the covers when her sister was abducted. She managed to get a good look at the guy's face before he kidnapped her sister. This man was Brian David Mitchell. He was from the neighborhood and now his face was plastered all over the country. It took 9 months, but eventually the two were spotted together and Mitchell was arrested. See, Mitchell was starting a cult, and in his mind he wanted to take Elizabeth as his bride for his cult. He did horrible things to her while she was kidnapped, but thank God they were able to rescue this girl alive.
Coming into number 1, we have Helen of Troy. This woman gets a bad rep, and that is arguably because her story is told by an assortment of jilted men and not from her own perspective. Helen of Troy was said to be the most beautiful woman in the world, and oddly, she's painted both as a hero on the one hand and as a whore on the other, which I mean. Helen of Troy was heir to the Greek kingdom of Sparta, and it was said that she was the spark that lit the Trojan War. So who was she? How did she make her way into so many history books and works of literature? What made her so beautiful? And did she really spark one of the most epic wars of all time? Some even claim that she was the daughter of the god Zeus, yet she seemed to be a real person. This is all very confusing, but as she died thousands upon thousands of years ago, we're likely to never be able to detangle fact from fiction and know more about who she really was. Coming in at number 10, we have John Doe 24. I only recently discovered that John Doe is America's way of saying like a generic man. In the UK we have a saying that goes a bit like, every Tom, Dick or Harry, although they aren't popular names anymore. So anyway, John Doe number 24, let me tell you about him. This was the name given to a mysterious teenager who was found walking the streets of Jacksonville in Illinois in October 1945. The teen was deaf and was unable to speak or even use sign language. The only thing he seemed to actually be able to do was write his name. Lewis. Sadly, a judge sent him to a mental health institute where he was given the name John Doe 24 as he was the 24th person to enter the system, nameless. Despite institutions being brutal in their day, he made quite the impression. He was said to have been a cheerful man and loved dancing and laughing. Don't we all? He died in 1993 after decades as a nameless man in the system. On his death, no one was any closer to discovering who he was.
At number 9, a man on the run. So another time in 2015, a man tried to escape a country through a bag. In Lima, Peru, a friend was dragging a really heavy bag and was acting nervous. He acted so nervous that officials asked him to open his bags. He did try to talk himself out of it, but the officials were unrelenting. So he gave up and opened his bag. The man inside the bag that was hiding was greeted by a dog that was sniffing the bag, which kind of a nice greeting. And then the man in the bag got out of it pretty casually, just knowing that he was caught. There was no use running away. Now, they didn't even make it to bag check. Did they really think they were gonna make it and flee Peru? I mean, if the man got checked in as a bag, there would still be the x-ray scan and they would see a human body in there. I just really want to know how far they think this plan would go. All the way? I doubt it.
Coming in at number 8, we have Carlos de Salazar. Here's the thing, sometimes people just want to be left alone. They have no interest in hanging out with people and they just want to go live in the forest for the rest of their lives. Now if those people were to tell people that they're gonna go live in a forest forever, everyone would try to stop them. So they just take off, and that's kind of what Carlos de Salazar did. One day the Spanish man was just gone. His family was looking everywhere for him, but they couldn't find him anywhere. Then 20 years later, some mushroom pickers in Italy came across this dude who had been living in the forest as a hermit. They spoke to the man for a little while and turns out it was Carlos de Salazar. What the F? Why was this dude all the way out there? Well, it turns out he just wanted to be alone forever. But these guys still contacted the police, who contacted his family, who flew out to Italy to try and find him, but by the time they got there, the hermit had gone and hidden himself again and has never been seen since.
Coming into number 7, we have the people of Easter Island. What happened to the people of Easter Island? You know Easter Island, right? The big remote island in the middle of the Pacific, the one with all the big stone heads. See? This island used to be the home to an ancient civilization that died under very mysterious circumstances. On the island, artifacts, wooden tablets and the like were discovered with strange undeciphered writing on it. Now the language has been given the, in my opinion, awesome name of Rongo Rongo. The writing is a series of glyphs, which is like a symbol kind of writing. There have been many attempts to crack the code, but so far they have been unsuccessful. It's thought that the language is a special and rare case of an independent invention of human writing, which is really cool. If the Rongo Rongo language is ever translated, it could reveal the scary secret of how the people of Easter Island died, but for now, it's a mystery.
At number 6, we have Steve Callahan. Steve Callahan wanted to do what a lot of sailors have done before. He wanted to sail across the Atlantic, but along the way he was hit by a storm which broke his boat in half. This forced him onto a little dinghy and he would spend the next 76 days there. He was able to survive by catching rainwater and fighting off sharks and doing some small workouts to stop his muscle atrophy. When he was finally found, he only weighed 94 pounds, and I'm sure he took a break from sailing after that.
Coming into number 5, we have Christopher Marlowe. I love a bit of Christopher Marlowe action, I really do. Dear Kit is supposedly a historical figure from Shakespearean times. He was thought to be a great friend of William Shakespeare, although some say Shakespeare stole his work, and others say that Marlowe could have been the bard himself, masquerading under a different name. Christopher Marlowe was said to be outrageously attractive and a very hard partier. Hats off to him. He unfortunately was murdered aged 29, a sadness which is resounded across Shakespeare's work. In his short years, Christopher Marlowe made quite the impression. He disappeared from Cambridge University for nearly a year, and he returned 32 weeks later to demand his Master of the Arts degree, which he was given. He was once arrested in the Netherlands for counterfeiting coins, but he was bailed out, and he may or may not have been involved in murdering an innkeeper's son. Despite being the son of a shoemaker, he became a favourite in Queen Elizabeth's court, which is why he got away with so much. Some say he was indeed a spy for the Queen. He was killed in a brawl, or so the story goes. Many people think that it was a planned attack. Christopher Marlowe was reportedly buried in an unmarked grave. Curious.
Now, to number 4, remember to pack your wife. So, a 60-something man was traveling from Nice to Moscow. He had a really big suitcase and was struggling to pull it along, because it appeared quite heavy to officials. Now, as I said, the officials, they got on and they discovered something unauthorized packed in his bag. It was his wife. His wife is a Russian woman in her 30s, and he believed that she wouldn't be allowed into the EU. And so his belief did have a hint of truth in it, since non-EU citizens wouldn't be allowed, but the thing is, his wife would, since she is married to an EU citizen. Him. Now, I find it funny that his first idea isn't to look up or double check that she isn't allowed or the different things that can be authorized, but his mind immediately went to, well, honey, if you want to go to Nice, you gotta get in the bag. Like, gee, how does his mind go there first? You know, think it through, people. Think it through.
Coming in at number 3, we have Edgar LaTulip. This was a missing persons case that everyone just threw aside when Edgar LaTulip went missing. See, Edgar had been struggling with his mental health for a long time, and on more than one occasion he was submitted to a mental institution. While there, he repeatedly tried to take his own life, and then one day he just disappeared. People looked for him for a little bit, but everyone just assumed that he was successful in his suicide. 30 years passed, and then out of nowhere, someone made a claim that they were Edgar LaTulip, who had been missing all of this time. And guess what? They actually were. What happened was Edgar suffered a serious head injury and forgot who he was, and spent the next 3 decades living as a different person. He started to remember his life through flashbacks.
We have Nicholas Flamel at number 2. Hello there, Nick. Mate, Nicholas Flamel was real. Not totally in the way that J.K. Rowling claimed, no, but his character in The Philosopher's Stone was based on a real man. This real man just so happened to be considered to be immortal. Flamel was a French alchemist, which is basically like a potion master. He was the OG Snape. He wrote mysterious books filled with very strange symbols that people believed discussed a magic life-prolonging stone. Sound familiar? It seems that even though Flamel died in 1417, books that sounded very much as if they were written by him cropped up hundreds of years into the future.
At number 1, we have Jose Salvador. This guy is the king of surviving on a floating raft. He makes Tom Hanks and Wilson look like a couple of chumps. If they ever try to do a Castaway style movie again, they should just cast Jose, because he's basically done the most method acting of any actor for this role ever. Jose Salvador was stuck on a broken down boat in the middle of the ocean for 13 months. He drifted from the coast of Mexico to the Marshall Islands. That's 6,600 miles. He managed to make it all the way there without dying by eating fish, turtles, and birds that would land on his boat. And all he had to drink was rainwater, his own pee, and turtle blood. That's why we need to get rid of the straws. So if you get stuck out in the ocean, there's still some turtles left, and you can take them and drink their sweet, sweet blood. After he was rescued, he talked a lot about how he would think about killing himself, and I can't blame him. Not only would you be hungry every single day, but you would be right on the edge of just being bored to death. I can't live without my podcasts. But in the end, this guy was a champ and beat out Mother Nature.
At number 10, a contortionist. In 2011, a lot of people were having valuables stolen on the route between Girona Airport and Barcelona, Spain. It was only an hour-long bus trip, and the bags stayed in the baggage compartment. So, what was happening? It turns out a contortionist was working with accomplices to steal laptops and other valuables on the frequent trips. One man would load a suitcase onto the bus at the airport, and then another man would pick it up in Barcelona. The contortionist in the suitcase would get out in between the stops and look for valuables with a flashlight. So the best joke about this one comes from a police spokesman. I believe this is what the British call an open and shut case. Because it's a suitcase. It's funny.
Coming in at number 9, we have Petra Pasiska. One day, Petra just disappeared. She was gone and no one knew where she was. This was in 1984, so there weren't cameras on every street corner or any social media to try and reach out to her. Her family searched and searched for her, but she was gone, and it seemed that she would never be found. She didn't pop up until 2015, so I think it's safe to say that this lady is one of the hide and seek champions of the world. The reason she was found is because she had a break-in and and she called the police. When the police asked her for ID, she didn't have anything, and then the whole truth came spilling out. She had ran away years ago and just hid herself from everyone. When asked how she was making money, she didn't tell anyone anything, and when her family tried to reach out to her, she refused to talk to them or tell anyone the reason she ran away.
Gloria Ramirez, aka the toxic woman, at number 8. Gloria Ramirez's life isn't the mystery here, it's her death. Up until the age of 31, she seemed like a happy and healthy young woman. That was until the evening of February the 19th, 1994, when she was admitted to hospital in Riverside, California. She was experiencing a rapid heart rate, a drop in blood pressure, and could not form normal sentences. Doctors tried to save her, but she started admitting a garlic smell, and when her blood was taken, it had weird light brown particles in it and smelled like ammonia. At odds with these symptoms, it was discovered that she had cervical cancer, which is extremely bizarre. Nurses tried to work on her to save her, but one by one they started to faint. Others experienced inexplicable paralysis. When her autopsy was conducted, it had to be done by doctors in hazmat suits to protect themselves. What was going on? Honestly, we don't know.
At number 7 we have Louis Jordan. Part of me wants to know what it feels like to be stuck out in the sea and fighting for your life, thinking that any day could be your last. At any moment you would die, and then when you think all is lost, you get home or you get rescued. I mean, I want to know what it feels like. I don't actually want to do it. Like, if someone could like build a VR experience, like a Castaway VR experience, I could do that, and I would just like play it while I'm at home eating my Pop-Tarts. I'm sure it would feel like the same thing for sure. Well, Louis Jordan did it for real. He was on a sailboat when it capsized, breaking the mast and his collarbone. The ship eventually corrected itself, but there was no way for him to sail anywhere. He was stuck out on the ocean for 66 days and managed to survive by eating crabs and fish that were attracted to the seaweed coming off of his boat. Eventually the Coast Guard found him and brought him home, and when you listen to the phone call between him and his dad, he apologizes for breaking the boat. Like, dude, your dad is just happy you're alive. If he had to choose between getting his son back and the boat, I'm sure he would choose his son, depending on how expensive the boat is.
Coming in at number 6 we have the Watcher. This is an active mystery that continues today. Who is the Watcher of New Jersey? Many people presume it's a man, but special studies of their handwriting have suggested it could be a woman. But I'm getting ahead of myself, let me tell you the story. Around 5 years ago in 2014, a couple in New Jersey purchased their dream home at 657 Boulevard for $1.4 million US. Before they even had the chance to celebrate and crack the champagne, they started receiving weird letters signed from the Watcher. I'm sorry, who? Good question, but one that still doesn't have an answer. The first letter they received read, "Dearest neighbor, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I've been in charge of watching and waiting for a second coming." The first letter stated that the writer had asked the previous owners to move out to fill the home with, I quote, young blood. Creepy. Delving deep into the past, it does seem like the house was once sold for $1 in the 1950s, which is pretty curious. The couple the current owners bought the property off, the Wood family, wanted a quick sale. In the Watcher's first note to the new family, they made reference to the couple's children. They said, "Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them out." Then, in later letters, the Watcher asked who was occupying what bedroom. They claimed that they liked to be able to track the family as they moved through the house. It seems that the Watcher was actually one in a long line of mysterious Watchers. In their first letter they wrote, "My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s and my father watched in the 1960s. It's now my time. I've been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming." I mean, what? The buyers freaked out, which I totally understand, and they even started a lawsuit to sue the Wood family who sold it to them. They accused them of hiding information about the voyeur. The most recent update of this story is actually the couple who received the letters and made the whole story public have finally sold the house, but at at a loss. The police still have no idea who the Watcher could be.
On to number 5. Bag on a train. Swiss officials found an Etrian man hiding in a suitcase. So it looks like the 6-foot guy shoved his body into a carry-on, and it's pretty unbelievable. It turns out the man was trying to catch a train from Italy to Switzerland without being caught. And the thing is, when you're that tall, trying to be confined into a carry-on, it's not comfortable, and he was making noises of discomfort, obviously. So those noises drew the attention of security, who went to investigate the bag, and the man emerged from the bag with his hand unzipping the luggage, and then he popped out. Now, this was a first for officials who had seen people hiding in trunks of cars, but not luggage trunks. And the video itself, it's just kind of amazing to watch. Just the zipping, and then his arm comes out, and his head pops out, and he's like, hello! He doesn't say hello. He's just detained by officers, but...
Coming in at number 4, we have Trapped. This story should be made into a movie because it's an absolutely insane survival story. A soccer team composed of boys between ages 11 and 16 were crushing it at soccer practice. These guys were going to become big stars, but nature wanted to test the resolve even more than a dribbling course. During practice, a monsoon rain started to come down and the entire team decided to hide in a cave for shelter. Well, the flooding got so high that they were forced deeper into the cave, and then they were trapped in there because the flooding blocked the exit. For 9 days they were trapped in there and no one knew where they were. Someone managed to put the pieces together as to where the missing soccer team went, and a team of Navy SEALs went in with scuba gear to rescue the kids and the coach.
Coming into number 3, we have the Salem Witches. Here be witches. The Salem witch trials were one of the weirdest moments in history. Occult hysteria swept over the town of Salem in Massachusetts as 19 people were convicted of witchcraft and killed in 1692, with hundreds of others accused or afflicted with hysteria. So, what was going on? Why were 14 women and 5 men considered to be witches? Why was colonial North America in general obsessed with witches back then? The short answer is probably religious fear and possibly poisoned bread, but the long answer involves many shades of we just don't know.
At number 2, we have the Robertsons. This is one of the craziest stories we have on this list. Not because it's a whole family that ended up stuck on a little dinghy with very few supplies and everyone lived, but that no one in the family tried to kill each other. If you had me and my whole family stuck on a boat for a little over a month, someone's getting thrown overboard. This family was trying to sail around the world and they were doing a pretty good job, but one day their boat got smashed up by some killer whales, and this forced the whole family onto a little inflatable boat. And that's where they would stay for the next 38 days. An entire family surviving on rainwater and sea life. A Japanese fishing trawler eventually found them and they were saved.
The ultimate mystery at number 1, we have Nostradamus. Michel de Nostradamus, shortened to Nostradamus for us, was a notable French astrologer, doctor, occultist, and seer. I love a good seer. He was born in France in 1503 and he died relatively short life in 1566. The man was expelled from university for his work as an apothecary, which is pretty witchy and I like it. Nostradamus is best known for his book Les Prophéties, which he predicted future events, many of which have actually come true. Some of the prophecies people identify as being true are the death of King Henry II of France, the Great Fire of London, the French Revolution, the discovery of pasteurization, the rise of Hitler, the success of Charles de Gaulle, the atomic bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, the assassination of JFK, and 9/11, just to name a few. Prophecies yet to come true are zombies rising from the grave, megadroughts in North America, a weakened West, catastrophic earthquakes, and World War III. Oh, and there's a chap called Mabus who signals the end of the world. Cool! Thanks, Nostradamus. Where is he getting his information? I need more information, but I won't get any, cause it's a good old-fashioned mystery.
Coming in at number 10, we have Amanda Eller. Imagine going for a hike, getting lost in the forest in Maui for 2 weeks, and then coming back like a G. Well, that's what Amanda was able to do. She was on a hiking trip out in Makawao Forest Reserve, and out of nowhere, she was gone. People went looking for her, but they couldn't find her. A helicopter was sent out, and they still couldn't find her. Her family put up a $50,000 reward to find her, and she was still nowhere to be found. Then 2 weeks later, a helicopter was doing one of the final swoops to find this poor girl, and there she was. She was limping and waving her arms in the air. They swung down and scooped her up, but how did this woman manage to survive in the woods for 2 weeks without any supplies? And why did she go missing? Well, Amanda actually studied the local vegetation, was able to figure out what she could and couldn't eat, and she survived on cantaloupe. So think about that next time you don't want to eat that little orange fruit that could save your life. And the reason she went missing was because she fractured her leg while she was on the hike. I think it's safe to say that this lady is as tough as nails.
Coming in at number 9, we have the man who couldn't stop eating. Honestly, my first thought was like, I feel you, sir, but after reading about this French peasant boy known as Tarare, I actually think that, really, I'm not that hungry. So it seems that Tarare was rejected by his parents after they found out that he was eating them out of house and home. Literally. Then he was going out of the house and eating all of the animal feed too. He also smelled bad, like really bad. He travelled to Paris and drew a crowd by eating live animals and large stones, but when the revolution began, he became a soldier where he required quadruple rations and 8 stray cats. Ugh. He became a spy as his general saw his unusual skill, and he was tasked by delivering military messages and secrets by smuggling them in his mouth. He was caught, he betrayed his general, he was savagely beaten, and he ended up in hospital. What did he do there? He started eating dead people and drinking blood. It is rumoured that he ate a baby, but he very strongly refutes it. It all got too much for him, and eventually he died of a ruptured intestine aged 27. When the autopsy happened, the surgeons had to stop midway because he smelled so bad.
At number 8, we have Alan Griffiths. So here's a hot tip when it comes to scuba diving. Bring a friend. When you go on solo dives, you might end up like this dude did. Alan Griffiths was 68 at the time, and he decided to go for a nice little dive on a sunken ship all by himself. When he came to the surface, he was a bit disoriented and he couldn't find his way back to shore, and then he ended up floating in the ocean for around 17 hours. No boat, just him in the ocean. Luckily, people back on land knew that he was supposed to come back, and when he didn't, they sent out a search party. And he didn't get eaten by sharks in the process. Such a good guy. It was just off the coast of northern Queensland, Australia, and Alan said when the rescue worker came in the water to save him, the first thing the guy said was, "G'day mate, you want a lift?" That's pretty funny.
Number 7, one of my favourite historical figures, we have Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was a Croatian, Serbian-American creator known for his work with electricity. He also had a cracking moustache. As talented as he was quite mysterious, and it seems that there probably was someone out there to get him. Perhaps it was all of the unpaid hotel bills he left behind him. He was an eccentric. Nikola developed a technology that was able to give people free energy, allegedly. He built the Wardenclyffe Tower, or Tesla Tower, in 1901, and he was planning on using it to transmit images across the Atlantic from New York to England using Earth to conduct signals. Now the long and short of it was that he wanted to give people free electricity, but his funding was mysteriously stopped and his plans were mysteriously destroyed. It was rumoured that he was up for a Nobel Prize in his time, but that too was mysteriously hindered. Odd. Very odd. He indeed was an odd man anyway. He claimed to only ever sleep 2 hours a night, and what he did with the rest of the time? Well, it is said that he used to feed pigeons at midnight in New York. One night, he was off to feed the pigeons and he was run over on his way to do so. After his death, his entire estate was quickly shipped to Belgrade on the insistence of his nephew. Fun fact about Nikola Tesla, he curled his toes 100 times each per foot per night, claiming that it, I quote, stimulated his brain cells. I'm gonna try that. How does one curl a toe though? Ugh, toes.
At number 6, we have some Walmart shenanigans. So years ago, a guy went to Walmart with his buddies when they were bored. You know, how it is in the burbs. So that particular Walmart had a lot of thefts lately, and this is important to remember. So when the group of teens got there, they were looking around trying to think of something to do when the main guy telling this story sees a suitcase. He gets many ideas, but convinces his buddies of one for sure. The manager of the store already answered their question about megaphones and is now seeing this group of teens cast glances around the store. So he's a bit suspicious. So then, the group of teens gets the main guy into the suitcase and they walk around the store with the talking suitcase, making noises, generally stirring a little fun among the other customers. So a bunch of people are giving them weird looks, but overall they're just having a grand old time. But then the manager spots the teens again and he just sees two guys dragging a heavy suitcase towards the front of the store. So with all of the thefts lately, he thinks the youths are just trying to run off with a bunch of liquor. Now, the teens catch on to the fact that the manager has caught them and the main guy escapes from the suitcase just so they can all make a run for it. Now the group of guys runs out with the manager hot on their heels and a cop that was sitting in the parking lot throws on its lights to try to chase them down. So the cop catches up and tells them that he got calls from the manager and they found the suitcase inside, but no liquor. So then the cop asks them what was in the suitcase. And so the main guy, who hid in the suitcase, just raises his hand. So the full story, if you want to read it in detail, is on Reddit by Pyronius. It's a fun one, I like the way he narrated it.
Coming in at number 5, we have Robert McDonough. This worked out so perfectly it almost seemed like a prank. Robert McDonough was in his 70s and started to show signs of dementia. One day he just disappeared and his family imagined the worst. The older man was wandering into the streets and would never be seen again. A search was launched and after 14 hours of knocking on doors, putting up posters, and following clues, it would seem that no one was going to be able to find him. The news picked up the story and was letting the public know that this older man was missing, and if you see him you should let the authorities know right away. Well, in that moment, everyone saw Robert wandering into the shot. Talk about making an entrance.
We have the man of Tiananmen Square at number 4. This is one of the most important images of all time. This image is of an unidentified Chinese man who stood in front of a number of big ass tanks as the Chinese government rolled out of Tiananmen Square, having suppressed protesters by force. The man holding shopping bags stood in front of the tanks, stopping them in their path in a simple and powerful act of resistance. The moment was captured by photographer Jim Widener and became a symbol of protest across the world. We don't know who the man who stopped the tanks was or what happened to him after this image was taken. It's likely that he was killed, in which case he will never have known what an impact his actions had.
At number 3 we have ALDI. I mean, this story starts off rough and then it just gets worse. This dude was an Indonesian fisherman struggling to make ends meet. So before you even get into the castaway story, this guy has a blue collar job in a third world country. He would sail out on his rompom to catch fish. A rompom is basically a hut with a sail on it. One day a storm kicked up and broke the sail off his rompom and then sent him adrift. He was able to survive by drinking 3 sips of fresh water a day from his supplies and cooking fish that he caught. He was found near the island of Guam, which is 1,300 miles away from Indonesia.
Coming in at number 2, we have the Pied Piper of Hamelin. No, it's not a fairy tale. It turns out that the Pied Piper of Hamelin was real, and yes, he did seem to spirit away a bunch of kids. The popular fairy tale says that the town of Hamelin was infested with rats when a colourful clothed man turned up and said that he would get rid of them for payment. Except he was never paid, so in a fit of rage, he stole the town's children and led them through a mountain. Only, well, did this actually happen? Surviving town records from the Church of Hamelin in Germany say, and I quote, "In the year of 1284, on the day of St. John's and Paul on June 26th, by a piper clothed in many kinds of colours, 130 children born in Hamelin were seduced and lost at the place of execution near the Kopen." It's actually thought that the children were taken as part of a children's crusade and that the whole business with the rats was added later as some kind of explanation. Some even say that the real piper was a paedophile who abducted children in their sleep. Suffice to say, he and the children were never found. What a mystery.
Now let's move on to number 1, a prison bust. So in January of 2017, a Venezuelan woman went to the prison where her husband is. She went along with their 6-year-old daughter, rolling along some of her daughter's toys in a bright pink suitcase. Then, while she was there for a visit, her husband popped into that suitcase in hopes for an escape. Now, their escape plan failed as guards noticed her having trouble pushing the overstuffed suitcase. And when they found her husband, just curled up in the suitcase along with the toys, they sent him right back to his cell to serve out the rest of his 10-year sentence for car robbery. Now, because of the attempted help in the prison escape, the wife was arrested and their daughter was taken into temporary custody by social services. So, prison escapes in a bright pink bag might not be the best bet. Just throwing that out there. Maybe. Who knows?
Coming in at number 10, we have the Prince of Silence. Meet William John Cavendish Scott Bentnick. He lived between 1800 and 1879. Sorry, you want his proper title? That's William John Cavendish Scott Bentnick, the Marquis of Titchfield and the 5th Duke of Portland. However, he liked to be known as the Prince of Silence, but we're just gonna call him William. William was rumoured to be disfigured, although in reality he may have just hated being around people. The only person who was allowed to see him was his valet and chauffeur, and even then, he shielded his face. If his staff ever saw him, they were instructed to ignore him. He did not want to talk. They were also bound to silence over his appearance. Oddly, he built a giant roller skating ring for his staff. He was also said to have built 15 miles of underground tunnels that allowed him to move around undetected. I honestly feel like rich people get to be eccentric, whereas poor people just didn't have enough time in the day to be quirky. They just had to get stuff done and survive.
At number 9 we have Josh Long and Troy Driscoll. Again, just a couple of good old boys going out for some shark fishing. Unfortunately for them, they probably spent too much time thinking about how much beer to bring and not enough time checking whether or not their boat would break down, because it did. Then the two of them were stuck out in the sea for 6 days. When they were eventually found, they both had severe burns all over their body from sun exposure. And the younger of the two, Troy, said they were able to stay alive by eating jellyfish.
Coming in at number 8, we have the Count of Saint Germain. Was this man a saint? Was he a count? Was he immortal? It seems that he simply appeared in French court one day, and the rest, as they say, is history. The Prince of Denmark thought that he was one of the greatest philosophers who ever lived, so here's a picture of him so you can get a visual. The chap in question was born either in 1691 or 1712, the exact date is unclear. He did however die in 1784, but at times he would make claims like he was 500 years old, or he even claimed to be immortal sometimes. He said he was the Prince of Transylvania. Famous French writer Voltaire sarcastically dubbed him the Wonder Man, but honestly, I'm uncertain he deserved that level of sass. He was pretty wonderful. Despite being unaccounted for, the Count of Saint Germain was well educated and wealthy, and that money had to come from somewhere. He wrote music, spouted philosophy, spoke several languages, he was a hit with the ladies. He eventually became an advisor to the king. He died without ever marrying. He had no children and no surviving heirs. Not that he had any fortune, if he ever had one. Nothing was discovered, just, you know, him. Dead. On to number 7, a YouTuber. An Australian YouTuber named Adam Saleh put out a YouTube video where he flew on a Tiger Airways flight in a suitcase. Now it shows his friend zipping him in a suitcase and then picking him up after the flight. But Tiger Airways themselves tweeted back at Saleh and said that they saw a bunch of inconsistencies in the video. So no, he didn't make it across, all the way, in the suitcase. So the airway pointed out they had footage of him boarding the plane, plus that he was too heavy to be put on board as luggage as per their restrictions, and they also said he would have suffocated, or at least become a popsicle. Now, Saleh didn't expect the media attention as it was a prank for entertainment on his channel, but you do have to expect that airlines don't want people attempting this if they think it's true. If you think plane delays are bad now, just imagine if airlines keep finding people in suitcases. It's gonna be a big holdup. Really.
Coming in number 6 we have Gabriel Mackey. All the evidence here pointed to Gabriel being murdered, but the story was even crazier than that. Gabriel called his wife in 1987 and told her he was on his way home and the two expected to see each other soon. He never showed up. The police went searching for him, but they couldn't find him. Then his burnt out car was found and it looked like someone might have killed him and destroyed his car to cover up their tracks. He was gone for 20 years, and then they found him through a search for medical records that flagged his name. He was tracked down and then he was able to give his story once he remembered who he was. Gabriel was in an accident that day, and the accident caused him to go into a fugue state. He forgot who he was and his entire life. He made up a new identity and started to work on a dock in Australia. It wasn't until a private eye who tracked him down started to show him pictures of his family that he started to remember who he was.
Number 5, we have Banksy. I am always here for a bit of Banksy, absolutely always. Banksy is a guerrilla artist who creates his work as graffiti in urban spaces. Banksy is known for his political messages. For example, he has depicted rioters throwing flowers rather than grenades, a naked man on the wall of a sexual health clinic, and you know, he's got his famous paintings, or graffiti paintings, the balloon girl and the bomb hugger. It's powerful stuff. It's presumed that Banksy is from Bristol in England, as that is where the art started, but his artworks have appeared across the world. There's even one in Toronto actually. Despite living in the age of CCTV CCTV, Banksy's identity has never been discovered. Also, we're so busy saying he and his regarding Banksy, but I guess he could very well be a woman. I kinda hope so. Have you guys noticed that when we create lists like this, there are more men than women? I think that's because while women's stories are told, and they definitely did have adventures and stories, history is saturated with stories from the perspective of the patriarchy. Prove me wrong.
Deborah, KYLIE, and Brad KAVENOFF. This one is a punch in the face from reality. It was 5 people taking a yacht down from Maine to Florida. Not that far into the trip, the yacht capsized, and the 5 of them had to get into a little inflatable Zodiac to survive. Could you imagine balling out on a yacht, drinking champagne, partying like a champ, and the next thing you know you're fighting for your life on a little blow-up boat? Well, I gotta say, it wasn't all 5 of them that were able to make it back in one piece. One person died from blood poisoning because they got some injuries, 2 other people were eaten by sharks when they tried to escape the boat and swim for help, and then the last 2, Deborah and Brad, they were rescued by a Russian freighter. I think if I ever get invited to a yacht party, I'm 100% going to go. Are you kidding me? I don't care if I end up in the middle of the ocean fighting for my life. I got to go to a yacht party. I can die knowing I'm cool.
Coming in at number 3, we have MARIKA ROKK. How MARIKA ROKK made a comeback after being associated with Adolf Hitler? Well, that's certainly a mystery. MARIKA was born in Egypt, but was of Hungarian nationality. However, she made her name as a dancer, singer, and film actress in Nazi Germany. It's rumored that she was a lover of both Joseph Goebbels and Adolf Hitler, although the latter is less likely. Nonetheless, she was a powerful woman in the Third Reich, and after the war, she was banned from the stage for 2 years. She was labelled a disgrace. Somehow, she managed to claw her way back into favour though, and quickly became one of Europe's most famous actresses. In 1948, she received the prestigious German Bambi Media Award. All seemed to be forgiven. It was later revealed that actually, she was a very successful spy for the Russians, or Soviets as they had been. It's also suggested that she may have been involved in killing a few people. I honestly feel like there needs to be a movie about this woman. I can't speak Hungarian or German, but aside from that, I would love to play her. So casting directors, I'm your gal. Yeah.
At number 2, guess what we have? A baby, again. So again, this year, not 3 years ago, this year, someone tried this. In September, officials explained that a US woman was carrying a 6-day-old baby in her luggage. They said she passed through the airport immigration counter without declaring that she was traveling with the baby, and they said that there was intent to hide that she was with the baby. She was caught at the boarding gate by airline personnel who searched her oversized suitcase and found the child inside the oversized suitcase. So she was arrested after she was found to not have any travel documents for the baby. Then after the woman was arrested, she gave officials an affidavit at the airport. The affidavit was allegedly from the baby's mother giving permission to take the child into the US, but it wasn't signed by the mother. Therefore, it's inadmissible in court. So now the case is being handled by anti-human trafficking investigators from Philippines National Bureau of Investigation because it's a very serious thing. You shouldn't try to smuggle a baby that is not yours into another country. I don't know why I'm staring off into the distance, but it should... People, you know?
And coming into the number 1 spot, we have Nguyen Thi Van. There's a lot of ways you can punish your kids, but be careful how you do it because sometimes the results can be devastating. Nguyen was living in Vietnam and her parents wanted to make her stop coming home late after school. Nguyen had a bad habit for staying out with her friends until the wee hours of the morning. This led to her parents locking her out, but she wasn't about to whine and moan. She went out and partied with some friends. On the way home, a woman offered her a ride, which she took, and then this woman drugged her. Nguyen woke up in China and then was sold to a strange man who took her for 21 years before she could escape.